So you're all done house hunting and you found the perfect one. I can't wait. I'm going to be going back to my office and I'm going to be filling out some paperwork for you guys. Some paperwork. Six documents. Six documents is what we're going to be going through today. The last one is actually going to be, there's actually seven. Okay. That wasn't a total boo-boo. But anyways, the seventh one is going to be the actual contract itself. But today I'm going to split it up into two so that I'm not completely boring you to tears. So stay tuned as we start going through them one by one. Hi, everybody. My name is Stacy Hesser, and I'm a licensed realtor here in the state of Oklahoma, specializing in the southern portion of the state along the I-35 corridor. So you've done all of your homework. You've found the perfect place. It matches your family. It matches your needs. It's got everything. You've got a yard for the dog, whatever. We're ready to do some paperwork. We're ready to make our offer. So let's get to it and let's start going through what all you're going to need to actually get that offer into the other realtor so that you can get that house sold and get those keys. All right, readers on. Here we go. Let's do a little bit of a screen share. All right, so we are going to be, oh, well, there we are. We're going to be going over to, my little picture is hovering. There we go. Okay. Was hovering right over the tab I needed to click on. So this is the Oklahoma Real Estate Commission's website. This is a public website. You're more than welcome to go out here and look for this information on your own. If you're ever curious and want to look at some contract language, you never know. But we're going to be going into the contract forms and related addenda. And the very first form that we're going to look at is actually the same form that the seller is actually going to fill out. They're going to have this one too. It's called the Acknowledgement and Confirmation of Disclosures. And this one, so right here, buyer acknowledges and confirms that the broker is providing brokerage services to the buyer and has described their duties and responsibilities to the buyer prior to signing the contract. So there's stuff I actually have to go through with you before you physically sign the contract. This is one of them. So the first box that I could potentially check is that I am, the buyer would acknowledge and confirm that the broker, that is a loose term. I am not officially a broker, but for the sake of the contracts, they do use broker just in terms of the brokerage that I work for. Broker also means real estate agent or realtor in these terms. So confirms that the broker is providing brokerage services to both parties. Oklahoma is a special state in that I could actually represent a seller and a buyer. So I could represent both sides of the deal. But I have to be open and honest with you and disclose that to you via this form. So if I was representing both sides, I would check this. The second one is talking about giving you the disclosures and the disclaimers or even an exemption form. There are three options that a seller has to fill out to talk about the condition of the property. So the first one would be a disclosure. The second one would be a disclaimer, or the third one would be an exemption. The disclosure would be for somebody that's actually living in the property. They, of course, have knowledge of anything that's gone wrong with the property at the time that they have lived there. A disclaimer is something, let's say, mom and dad passed away and you've inherited the property. You haven't lived in the house, so you're not sure what kind of condition the home really is in. You haven't paid for repairs. You haven't done anything to the house. So you would actually fill out a disclaimer because you have no knowledge of it and you're not living there. An exemption, probably one of the most popular reasons for using an exemption would be for like a bank foreclosure. A bank obviously doesn't have they haven't lived in the house, they have no knowledge of the house, and they would actually be exempt. That's the most common reason that you would ever see an exemption. But moving on, we've got buyer acknowledges receipt of lead-based paint. Lead-based paint, of course, has to be disclosed if it was a home that was constructed before 1978. So anytime a home was constructed before 1978, there has to be an extra form for a lead-based paint disclosure. Now, the seller might not have any knowledge of whether or not there's lead-based paint in the house. That's perfectly fine. There's a box for that to check on the form itself. So you would either have a home that was built before 1978, boop, boop, or you would have a home that was built after 1978. Boop, boop. So you would just check one of these two boxes right here. There is an instance where a transaction is not a residential dwelling. So obviously if you have land or something like that, there's no lead-based paint. You would just go ahead and you check that one. So this one right here is my other half of this. Buyer acknowledges and confirms that they have received a receipt of estimated costs. So there's obviously always costs involved when you're purchasing a home. I am required to fill out an estimate of costs for you so that you would understand what all of the fees would be. You're actually going to get several iterations of this estimation of costs. I do the very first one. It would be your most rough estimate you would ever see. And then beyond that, your lender would probably be taking over a bit of that task, and because they would have a lot more information on what your interest rate was that you got locked in at. They would be able to give you to the penny the exact amount of your down payment that they would be requiring. So a lot of those charges do fall back a little bit on the lender, but I do in the very beginning give you a rough idea of what those costs are going to be. But some of them aren't always determined at the time that you're actually making an offer. Like I said, interest rate, of course, would be one of them because they change hourly. But that's it. That's it for this form. We would go ahead and we would sign this. You can either, if you're signing up with me to be your agent, then you would either have the option to do this as a wet signature. So I'd give you a piece of paper and you'd sign it. Or you could receive this electronically through email and sign it through my system called DocuSign. But anyways, that's going to be it for this one. This portion on the bottom is for the seller to complete, so that does not apply to us. But like I said, this form does apply. This one crosses over. This is one of the forms that crosses over to both sides. Okay, so that is our acknowledgement and confirmation of disclosure. Let's talk about the buyer broker service agreement. So this is the actual agreement that you would sign to hire me as your agent. I've wooed you, you love me, you can't believe the stuff that I'm doing for you. So you're like, man, she's the one, I'm gonna hire her. So this just kind of goes through what the agreement between the two of us would be. So let's say that you're out and about on a weekend, maybe I'm not here, and you go into an open house and there's an agent in the open house. The agent should be asking you if you are in an agreement with an agent, and they should, the moment you say, yes, I am, I filled out a buyer broker service agreement, I am in contract with an agent, they should back off and say, if you have any questions, I can answer what you have here, but as far as anything more specific, they should refer you back to me as your agent. So sometimes people can get really confused over that, and it can be really unfortunate. But if you're in an agreement with an agent, this is the form that you would be signing up. So let's see here. So I'm going to get into the, like I said, okay, so let's get into the actual purpose. So what would your expectations be of me? So I would consult with you regarding specific properties, whether you bring them to me or I bring them to you. A lot of people, of course, there's so much information on the internet today. A lot of my buyers actually bring me homes. So just always use a real estate agent. They'll have the most up-to-date information on whether or not a property is actually available. Some other websites like to say things are available and they're not available. They haven't been available for years. I don't know how that happens, but anyway. Okay. So the buyer represents that they have not already signed up an agreement with another broker. So in other words, they're not already working with another agent, and they would not be. So this one's kind of a biggie. My mentor, one of my mentors, likes to talk about my hula hoops. I got to stay in my hula hoop. So my hula hoop is real estate. My hula hoop is not inspections. My hula hoop is not finance. My hula hoop is not necessarily appraisals. There are different people for all of those. So while I can give you some information, I would not be able to really advise you on whether or not a roof needs to be repaired, or the foundation looks horrible, or this house needs something. I would be stepping outside of my hula hoop, if you will, for all of that. And sometimes it can get a little tricky. So that's what all of that really is boiling down into is I can advise you on things, but it's really on you to get inspections done and obtain your own financing and make sure that you clearly understand from those specific experts what it is that you're getting yourself into. Number 3 talks about the duration of the agreement. It's going to start on a date and it's going to end on a date. So we could be into an arrangement for 3 months, 6 months, whatever it is that you're comfortable with. We'd even be into an agreement for a day just to show you some specific properties. You never know. Number 4 talks about the compensation. Most times the compensation would actually be coming from the listing agent right here, C. So the only time that this may not come into play would be if you're potentially looking at a for sale by owner and we would be purchasing a house from somebody that doesn't currently have a realtor. We would have to have some kind of separate agreement because they're obviously not a listing broker. So in that case, we would probably do other and come up with some kind of other arrangement. Usually if I do that, I would be negotiating with the owner of the property to pay my brokerage fee, to pay my commission rather. So it still wouldn't fall back on you to pay that. However, I will say that it's not unheard of for a buyer to potentially cough up some money to cover the commission fee if, like I said, there's just some other circumstances out there. Most times, I'm going to say like 99% of the time, though, it's going to be C, and the commission would be covered by the listing agreement with the listing agent. This just talks about when the commission would actually be due. And of course, it would be due upon closing. You wouldn't need to pay any fees or anything up until that time. And like I said, it's not on you. It's on the listing agent, the listing brokerage, to actually make that payment. So I don't want you to be afraid or think that you're obligating yourself into paying something to me that actually comes from the listing side. Number 5. So cost of services or products obtained from outside sources. So I would not be responsible for actually ordering it unless you tell me to or you are asking me to do something. So it would always be, I wouldn't say, oh, I have a foundation guy, I'll get everything scheduled. It shouldn't happen that way. I should advise you and give you a list of who I can recommend to you. And then it's up to you if you want to go ahead and call and get that scheduled or if you want me to call and get that scheduled. But again, it's at your discretion. It is your choice. Number 6, okay, other buyers. So let's say we're looking at a property. I could potentially have other buyers that are interested in the same property. So this just talks about the fact that I would be representing you, and there could be a chance that I'm representing another buyer that's coming in. Number 7, equal opportunity. So I would not, of course, discriminate in any way, shape, or form based on age, race, color, religion, sex, handicap, familial status, or national origin. Okay, number 9. It's kind of an odd one. It just talks about how if there's more than one buyer, we may have more than one form. It might be the same form, but the same forms coming together can make one form. So anyway, merging. Number 10, copy of the agreement. I would be providing to you a copy of this agreement. And of course, like I said, it would stay into effect from this time to this time. And I would also be providing to you a copy of the residential sales contract information booklet. I don't provide that to my clients up front. I actually provide that as part of their sales contract agreement. It just makes more sense. You don't need to necessarily know about a contract before you do a contract unless you really want to. It's like 24 pages long. Anyway, and then we would all sign off on it again through my DocuSign system or in person with wet signatures. So that is that one. We're down 2. Okay, next one is going to be our disclosure of the brokerage services. Oh, my all-time favorite. I call this my I won't lie, cheat, or steal form. So this one I would be filling out for a buyer brokerage agreement, the agreement that we just talked about. And then also we would check off for a sales agreement. Sales agreement is the other word for contract. I will be talking about the sales agreement or contract or residential sale form next week. In next week's video, it's going to be our most important thing to know when buying a house. But this week is just going to be the 6 important things you need to know about buying a house. So what are my duties to you? What are my duties to the state of Oklahoma? Let's talk about it. So I promise to treat all parties with honesty and skill and care. unless you waive it, I don't know why you would, but unless you waive it, I would receive all offers and counter offers. I would put those all in written form. I would present them all to you timely. I would be informing you of any closing costs that would be involved in doing a transaction. Like I said, that is a cost to buyer sheet. I talked a little bit about that on the other form. I would keep the party for whom I am providing services for informed. It is my obligation to you to call you, to text you, and to email you and make sure that you are aware of what is happening with the transaction. I would timely account for any monies. That would be the earnest money. I would keep confidential information confidential. So this one's kind of a biggie, but I am bound to you to not share any personal information or any information that would not be found publicly. Even if it's public information, I would not share that either unless you wanted me to. But for example, I would not be disclosing whether or not you would be willing to pay something higher than what we're proposing. I would not be talking about any of your terms other than those that have been offered. So something on that one is like, we're asking for closing fees to be paid for by the seller, but we really don't need closing fees to be covered. I would not talk about any of that. That is a breach of our confidentiality between one another. Like I said, here's number 4, information specifically designated as confidential by a party unless the information is public. Let's see. Anyway. So I would disclose any information pertaining to the property as required by the Residential Property Condition Disclosure Act. So I already touched on this just a little bit about disclosures, disclaimers, and exemptions on a property. So this just says that if I found something wrong with a property myself, that I would be required to disclose that. And we'll get into that a little bit more a little bit later. I, of course, have to comply with any requirements put forth by the Oklahoma Real Estate Code. And if I work with one party or both parties, meaning if I'm just working with the buyer or I'm working with the seller and the buyer, that I would be, all of these duties and responsibilities hold true for both parties, and I would not breach that or share any information as a result. Number 2 is brokerage services provided to both parties in the transaction. Like I said, this talks about how in the state of Oklahoma, it is okay for us to represent both sides. I'm going to have a little bit of a real moment here with you guys. I don't like this. In some ways, it just makes me feel a little bit uncomfortable because at some point in a transaction, I truly need to represent you as my buyer. And if I'm representing the seller and I know information on their part and I know information on your part, it just makes things a little bit difficult to truly and impartially negotiate for both parties. I will represent both parties, but typically it's because a property is being sold as is. So that's the part, in my opinion, that things can get tricky if you're representing both sides. So if you're needing to if you as a buyer have found some things wrong with the house and you want the seller to fix it, I need to go to bat for you. I need to tell that seller and I need to make it clear that we're not going to move forward with this transaction if these things don't get fixed. That's when I'm really going to bat for you. And if I'm trying to go to bat for the seller, it just makes things, I just don't like it. It just seems really uncomfortable to me. So that's my personal opinion on the whole thing. That is a Stacey Hesser thing, but like I said, it is legal in the state of Oklahoma. And like I said, I have represented both sides, but it's only in instances where a property is being sold as is, and it's just a pretty cut and dry transaction. So number 3, broker providing fewer services does not apply. Keller Williams is a full service brokerage, so this just doesn't even apply to us. We do it all, baby. Number 4, confirmation of disclosures and duties and responsibilities. So the duties and responsibilities disclosed by the broker shall be confirmed in writing by each party, and you'll be receiving that a copy of all of that, because that's my job, is to keep you all informed. That's it. That's form number 3. Okay. Check. Okay. My responsibility number 2. Where are we? 4. Number 4. Lordy. Cost to buyer. So there are costs involved in buying a house. So like I said, my first estimation on this is the most rough estimation. Oh my gosh, I just wish I could like asterisk the heck out of it just because there's so many unknowns, there's so many variables in all of this. So I'm just going to give you kind of a high level overview. So this portion here talks about me breaking down what your monthly payment would be. So things that are unknown on this form, your interest rate, we don't have a locked in rate yet. Your mortgage insurance, not locked in yet. Your insurance premium or your homeowner's insurance, not locked in yet. Taxes, we're going to have an estimate on that one too. So not completely locked in yet. We're going to get really close on that one though. Dues, if you're part of a home, if you're buying a property within a homeowners association, that one's pretty much known. But this is one of those squishy ones. So I'm going to give you an estimated monthly amount. Of course, I'm going to be filling in the property address. We will know our initial offer amount, but if we go into a counter negotiation, if we're countering with offers back and forth, then I have to fill out this form each time based on the new offer price or concessions, meaning things we're asking the seller to pay for on that. And that would impact this entire form. The loan amount, it impacts that. Any kind of the mortgage insurance premium, the total loan amount, what we're estimating our closing date to be. This has multiple columns. Usually you're going to know what kind of financing. So I actually don't work with buyers until they're pre-qualified. So my buyers do know what kind of financing it is that appeals to them. There are different stipulations for different types of loans. So one example of that, and actually it's not listed on here, but it's very close to FHA. But FHA and USDA are very similar loans. They're both federally backed, as well as, of course, a VA loan. But VA loans are very unique in its own sense of like what your down payment requirements are going to be. FHA has different requirements for their down payment, and USDA is also a different type of down payment program. But the VA, of course, would be dependent on your military service. FHA, I want to say there are some stipulations on what you need income based on being able to qualify for FHA, but you're going to be making a lot of money. USDA is dependent on where it is that you're living. So USDA loans are actually loans for rural areas. Most things that if you're looking to purchase a home inside the city limits of Ardmore, typically you would not be able to get a USDA loan. But there's actually a website out there for that to see if you can qualify for a USDA, if a property qualifies for USDA loans. And then of course you got good old fashioned conventional. So each of these, like I said, this very first column, down payment, each of these has a different type of requirement for your down payment. This is a buyer cost sheet, so broker fee in 99% of these instances, there is none, 0, 0, 0, 0. Depending again on the type of loan you're getting or who your lender is, you're going to have different amounts that are payable to the lender for your loan. So that would all be listed through here. Whoops, ooh, look at me making things pink. Things that need to be paid in advance. So things that need to be paid in advance would be your prepaid interest. Again, that's a variable amount. Your mortgage insurance premium, your hazard insurance premium, that's just your homeowner's insurance. This one's a toughie. You do got to pay your entire year's premium up front. You also, on top of that, need to pay an additional 3 months to have in what we call reserve or an escrow. You might hear either one of those terms thrown around. But another one that's on here that you would need to pay for a year in advance would be flood insurance, just in case if there are flood zones within Ardmore. So just be aware of that. So again, this portion right here are things that would be paid for in advance. The next one would be more things that are paid in advance with your lender, but these again are things that are paid for reserves. So you would have 3 months of your homeowner's insurance, 3 months of property taxes that would be paid, and then if applicable, 3 months of flood insurance. This portion is dedicated to your title charges. This varies too. Just if there's issues with the title, if there's issues with the abstract, any kind of problems, then costs can increase based on all of that. So again, just be aware. Next portion is for the good old government. There's some recording fees to actually record your deed as well as your mortgage certification. This portion is probably the biggest variable we're going to have on here, because depending on the house that you're putting in an offer on, you don't necessarily know what you may or may not want to get inspections done on. Some loans require you to have a termite inspection. Some loans might require, actually, depending on what property you're buying, you may need to get a structural inspection. That would be applicable if you're looking at getting like a mobile home. Some might actually require you, depending on how much acreage you're buying, you may need to get a survey done. So just be aware, these are all, again, things that can fluctuate greatly depending on what kind of property it is that you're looking at or where the property is located. Okay, so moving on, right now, this part's for assumptions. Our interest rates are so low right now, it's not going to be happening. But when interest rates start going up, they may want to try to assume, you know, these interest rates that are down at like 2.75%. I know I would. If interest rates were up at 4 or 5%, I'm definitely going to check into doing an assumption. So this may be something that will be coming up in our sort of near future. But anyways, this is a summary of all of your expenses right here. This would be less buyer's costs paid by seller. Again, this is going to be a big variable for you. So depending on what it is that you've gone through in your negotiation process, you're going to be having changes on this one. Whatever earnest money you're going to apply would, of course, come back to you at closing. And whatever taxes that the seller is going to have to cover, which is dependent on your close date, would be deducted here. And then down here would be your bottom line. Literally your bottom line. But anyway, so you'd have your expenses, less monies paid, less credits given, and that would give you your final balance due. I would sign off on this, prepared by myself from Keller Williams Ardmore, and then you as the buyer would just sign a date. So that is number 4. Okay. How are you doing? Are you doing okay? Okay. So one of the forms that we will be signing off on, depending on the property again, is you're going to have a disclaimer, a disclosure, or the exemption form. So the disclaimer is, let's read it right here. It says that the seller has never occupied the property and make no disclosures concerning the condition of the property, and they have no actual knowledge of a defect concerning the property. This is why, to me, landlords should never fill out a disclaimer, because landlords pay for the repairs. They do have knowledge of defects that exist in a property. But this is one of the allowable forms. Like I said, this is a form that I would see in most instances. If there was a death and somebody was inheriting a property, this would be the form that a family would actually use. So they would have already signed off on it as the seller. You would need to sign off on it as the purchaser. The next one is going to be the actual disclosure. Ooh, this one's a doozy. Only in that this is the one I feel the worst for the sellers. It's just, oh my God, it's so many. Look at this. I mean, there's just so many boxes. There's so many things they got to think about and consider. But the condition of the property would, the condition of the property would either be working, not working, don't know if it's working, or if it's not included. So hopefully what you're looking for is that things are working or not included. So just look in these two. Oh, I should really say not working. Kind of in the do not know if working, but if you see X's in these, those are the ones to really pay attention to. Buyer initials here, seller initials here. So this form would already be initialed by the seller. You would get this before making an offer. Okay. Again, if anything's tagged as not working, you could give an explanation. The seller could give an explanation on that. This just gets into some yes/no questions like flooding, zoning, whether or not there have been any kind of repairs done on the house, anything that's been environmental on the house, like mold or lead-based paint. Bottom of the form, we need to initial 2 times. The seller needs to initial 2. Page 3, last page. Again, just a continuation of the environmental conditions of the property and anything talking about things that are shared in common, easements, and homeowners associations. So they would have to address this here. Anything else that has not already been addressed, they would need to disclose. And any other fees or dues that are required on the property that you would not have disclosed earlier, you would need to indicate here. If somebody actually checked X, or X, oh my God, whatever. If somebody actually said yes to any of these items on pages 2 and 3, then they would also need to say right here an explanation of why they said yes. Sometimes this can require an extra page of somebody to actually write out what exactly went wrong. I've known sellers to, maybe they had a roof or a leak in the roof and they needed to give some kind of an explanation on what was wrong with the roof, and somebody came out and fixed it and what kind of repairs were done, and there's been no problems with it since. So this disclosure is a protection for the seller. It's their opportunity to air their dirty laundry and put it out there for the world to see, and basically not get sued over it if something goes astray. So be very honest on these disclosures. If you're working with a seller, it won't hurt you in any way, and you're just doing nothing more than informing your buyer and bringing a well-informed buyer to your property. Okay. On the date this form is signed, the seller states that based on the current actual knowledge of the property, the information is true and accurate. And then if there's extra pages, we have to say that. So seller would have signed here, you would be signing below. Okay, so the last one is the exemption. So this just gives the address. This one just talks about these are all of the different reasons and why an exemption would actually be used. So the most common reasons I would see somebody using an exemption would be a new build. It's a brand new build. They haven't lived in it. Another one would be for a foreclosure. So obviously a bank's never lived in a house. They have no knowledge of the condition of the home. So they would use this exemption in those cases. Whoever is selling a property again would sign, and the buyer would sign. Easy peasy, nice and easy. Okay, that's number 5. Okay, so our last form to go over, right, is the lead-based paint. So if you're purchasing a home from 1978 to present, if the build date was from 1978 to present, this does not apply. This only applies to homes that were built before 1978 and have the chance to actually have lead-based paint in the home. So the seller disclosure form is right here. On the lead-based paint disclosure sheet is, of course, your property address. You have to say where the property is located. You have to say whether or not you know of lead-based paint being in existence or you have no knowledge of it. You would have to say whether or not you've provided any records, if you have any, or you don't have any records pertaining to it. So you have records, don't have records, you know of it, you don't know of it. You as the purchaser would be filling out this portion. So you're going to get this form and it's already going to be filled out. So purchaser would be working through this section here. So you've received copies of any information, you received a copy of the pamphlet, and you would have a 10-day opportunity to go through and conduct an inspection, or you're waiving the inspection. The selling agent would have initialed here, talking to the seller about their obligations to disclose lead-based paint. And then the seller would be signing and dating on the bottom, and the purchaser, you, would be signing and dating here too. And then the selling agent would be signing at the very, very bottom. But that's it. That's it for this part. So next week, we're going to talk about, or I should say in my next video, we're going to talk about the residential sales agreement. This is part of it again. We went through this already, but we really like redundancy and making sure that people fill this out. So it's included with the residential sales contract. But this is a 6-page form that we're going to be going through. And this is, to me, the most important thing you need to know as a buyer. So stay tuned for that one in my next video. I hope this helps you. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you didn't fall asleep. Please, I hope you didn't fall asleep. I appreciate your time in watching this, and I really, most importantly, appreciate you. So thank you so much. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to put them down below, and I will check that out. And like I said, check out my other videos. I can't wait to go over my most important thing to talk about as a buyer. So until then, bye. Date and end on whatever date. Oh my God. Sorry, I just ate dinner. Okay, let me say that one again. Oh, okay. Oh, Lord. Number 2 does not apply because we are a full service brokerage. We are not a part-time or part whatever brokerage. We are a full service brokerage. Oh, that was wrong. Oh, no, sorry, wrong one. I'm skipping ahead. Okay, number 4. Oh, God darn it. Okay. Whew. Oh, wow, this is like stupid. That's crazy. Oh, I talked about that wrong. Oh my God, I hate this form. Okay. Stop.